Pierce, a deeper dive into the issues that affect you, the residents of the Ohio Valley. Sponsored by Trinity Health System.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Rich Pierce for This is One-on-One with Rich Pierce. This week I'm joined by the Jefferson County Commissioners. We have Commissioner Tom Gentile and Commissioner Dave Maple with us today. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Greatly appreciate it. This is not a meeting of the commissioners officially. There will be no votes taken here. Nothing like that. But we are here to talk about some pressing issues in Jefferson County. And first I want to get to the Port Authority. There was a meeting on August 7th about Port Authority, possible restructuring. There's also been some talk about possible leadership changes there. So what's going on at the Port Authority and what needs to be done maybe better out of that entity? Commissioner Gentile?
I just think it was I thought it was a really good meeting last night. We had representatives there from the city of Steubenville. I think there were 5 council, the mayor and 4 council people. All 3 commissioners were there. A pretty good representation of the Port Authority. Almost everyone was there. And I just think it was good to get everyone together and kind of discuss where we were going. There's been a lot of change, talk about changing in the bylaws, particularly with Steubenville. Their funding issues hasn't been anywhere close to what the county's put in, and maybe it doesn't need to be that way. So we've talked about maybe making some changes to board seats, but we really didn't decide anything. It was a very good informational meeting, answered a lot of questions, and I think it was a good get-together.
Is the Port Authority doing the desired job right now in terms of bringing in economic development?
Well, it's kind of twofold. They're doing the right job, but the Port Authority is still a really new entity. It's not a mature entity, and there's a little bit of pressure, and maybe some from us, because we are at a place in county as far as economic development that we've never had the opportunity to be in a long time. So the pressure is, while we're in this state of growth and this good employment situation that we have, is let's make sure we're structured right, we're functioning right, and let's hit home runs. We're sure hitting singles and doubles, but we as county commissioners are always adding that little pressure. What can we do better? What can we do next? And some of that self-evaluation by the Port Authority. Are we structured right? Are we looking at things correctly? Are we engaging everybody in the community that we need to engage? So I think what you saw in that meeting was a good discussion about that. How are we functioning? And let's not miss this opportunity that's right now in our county. And I don't think we're missing it, but we need to really keep our eye on the ball so we do a good job with it.
An issue that's been brought up many times by many different people, yourselves included, is marketing the county. How can Jefferson County be marketed more effectively to bring in those outside businesses to further enhance it?
Well, I think that's one of the things we're trying to figure out. I think Commissioner Maple hit the nail on the head with what he was talking about. Now is the time. We've got to get this right, and that's really why everybody took the time last night to sit down and try and figure out just what is the best way going forward. Being average or being second best isn't good enough right now. We need to figure the best way we can go forward. And I think that's one of the things that's evolving that we're trying to figure out.
And you're talking about now being the opportune time, the optimal time for this to happen. So why is that? What are the circumstances that have created this opportunity?
Well, I talk about it quite often, but since I became elected, we've tracked our unemployment rate, and we know, I can remember back when it was 10% plus. And I've always looked at how many people want to have a job that don't have a job. Excuse me. And it's always been around 2,000 people in our county that claim they want a job but didn't have a job. It's always been that number. We're down to 1,200 people in Jefferson County on that list. And there's a part of that list that won't be employed at some point. So we're where we have the best opportunity with oil and gas industry coming in, the steel mills coming back, all the activity that everyone sees. Employers are dying to get people working for them. So now is the time that I haven't seen in my tenure. We've been trying to get here. So while we're here and while that wave is in our favor, let's get our diversification of employment. Let's get some people brought in that can help bring more people into our county to start growing the population a little bit. So it's just a really good time in Jefferson County to take advantage of that environment.
What are some factors that have put Jefferson County in this environment?
Well, the oil and gas industry is a huge factor. You know, we've got the one cracker that's already being built in Monaca, the Royal Dutch Shell cracker, and that is very real. I think they have the second, third, and fourth largest cranes in the world all on that site simultaneously. They're employing most of the people in that skill set around the world to build that facility. And now there's the very good chance the PTT plant in Dilly's Bottom is going to go, and we're sitting right smack in between the two. And the most important thing about that, which would be different from, you know, drilling of wells and pipelines, is those are downstream, and the downstream is really where the most jobs are. It's the most industries spin off of that. So when there's a cracker, whether it's petrochemical, plastics, pharmaceuticals, all of those are spin-offs of that. So we're really sitting right in the front row. Do you agree?
Yeah, well, yeah, and you combine that with the growth of JSW, the growth at Timetsine, our educational groups in the area. So you combine that with the oil and gas, it really is a time that we haven't experienced in quite a long time. And the thing that I like about it is, while oil and gas and probably some of the steel is the bigger piece of it, it's the opportunity to diversify. This community has always been a one or two industry type employer, and we ebb and flow as that industry does. Now we really have an opportunity to say, let's bring some other type of employers in and diversify, so when one has a rough year or two or a bad cycle, we're not as affected by that.
And I was going to ask about diversification. When you're talking about oil and gas, is that a bubble that could possibly burst in a few years?
I don't think it's a bubble, but I think it's got a different cycle that we're not used to. And from a county spending, from government spending altogether, we've got to be cautious because the cycle works a lot more rapidly than a coal or a steel or something like that. So we've been talking all along when we do our budgets just to be respectful that is a fast-moving target, and it could drop out quickly, and we need to be ready for that.
What are some types of industries you'd like to see come to Jefferson County to diversify?
I'd like to see the employers that are employing 100, 200, 500 in various industries, because as Commissioner Maple was saying, that's where you really benefit diversity. So we're open to whatever's willing to come in, and I think the opportunities are there. I think one of the big key components right now is Commissioner Maple talked about a little bit, is workforce. And I don't know that we have the workforce right now in the county that's going to fill these jobs. You know, for years you go in the coffee shops and everybody would talk in the morning, we need jobs, we need jobs. Well, now I got to counter to the people and say, no, we need people that will fill these jobs. We need people that are willing to show up to work and work. And I know that's not a really politically correct thing to be saying here, but it is a fact. It's a fact around the country, and it's become a fact in Jefferson County, too.
Is it training? Is it, you see people cite the inability to pass drug tests. We're dealing with the opioid epidemic up here. Is it a combination of both of those things, or are there other factors?
The way I see it, and when this oil and gas really hit the county first, we heard a lot about the drug, people can't pass a drug test. And I'll be honest, I haven't heard that to be as major of an issue as it used to be. It's died down. It doesn't mean it's gone, but it's died down, and I think some of the opioid efforts still need to be reinforced, but I don't think they're affecting that employment. And I think, and you all covered some meetings where employers, I think the Chamber of Commerce, the commissioners, and the educational group is getting together to say, what do we need to do better to make sure when folks graduate high school or college that they have the skills, not just the technical skills, but the soft skills, to go in and shake someone's hand and say, I'm going to work 40 hours a week for you, and I'm going to do a good 40 hours work for you, and then go home. That's to me, as an employer, those are important things, and it's not just in the area, but the whole nation is changing a little bit, where we used to struggle to who got the most overtime. Everybody wanted the overtime. Now your employee base is more like I don't want to work any overtime. So employers are trying to adjust to that type of employment.
You know, Rich, in a non-statistical approach, wherever I am, I don't care whether I walk in a restaurant or a coffee shop or the hardware store or the car dealership, I'm always talking to the people that work there, usually the owners, a small community, you know who they are. And that question always comes up, and I always ask them how things are going, and almost every time they cite the inability to retain and attract employees that are willing to show up and work. And I hate to belabor the point, but I do think that that is an issue. I think there are more opportunities in our community if we had more of that.
All right, more on it. We're going to hold off. If you have anything else, we've got plenty of time left, but we do have to hit a commercial break. So we will be back in just a couple of minutes. This is One-on-One with Rich Pierce.
Score big this season when you finance your vehicle with First Choice America Community Federal Credit Union. Rates as low as 2.79% APR and $100 cash in your pocket. Get on the winning team with First Choice America Community Federal Credit Union.
Termites. Feasting on homes 24/7. We're on the move. Roger.
Hey, Rick, all good? Oh, yeah, we're good.
We're good.
Termites never stop trying to get in. At Terminix, we never stop working to keep them out because they can cause thousands of dollars in damage. Call Terminix now to schedule a free termite inspection. As America's leading termite control provider, we'll do whatever it takes to stop them in their tracks. 100% satisfaction guaranteed. To schedule a free termite inspection, call 1-800-TERMINIX and protect your home. And if they ever do come back, so will we. To schedule a free termite inspection, call 1-800-TERMINIX or visit Terminix.com. Terminix, defenders of home.
On the sidelines this season, get in the game and refinance your vehicle with First Choice America Community Federal Credit Union. Rates as low as 2.79% APR and $100 cash in your pocket. Get on the winning team with First Choice America Community Federal Credit Union.
This is One-on-One with Rich Pierce, a deeper dive into the issues that affect you. Sponsored by Trinity Health System.
Welcome back. And just before we hit the commercial break, we were talking about the workforce. And Commissioner Gentile said there is a silver lining in that more people are just going to need to move into jobs.
Oh, yeah. I don't want to sound like gloom and doom, because the upside to this is if the jobs are available and the opportunities are here, we're in a beautiful situation where we have a low cost of living. So it would be very attractive for people to move into Jefferson County, buy a home, get a job, buy groceries, buy a car, spend money, and that all just makes the local economy really start to churn. And I think that's where a lot of this will head, and you're already seeing some of it. I talk to the realtors on a very regular basis. Housing prices have gone up all across the county. In every sector, prices have increased, whether it's the low end, the mid, or the high. And houses that used to sit on the market for months are gone in weeks. So I think that's a sign of what's happening, and I think as more things happen, more jobs are here, people will move in, and God bless us, because people move in, they have to spend money. They have to buy groceries and do all the things that we all do.
Is the housing there to move everyone in who you're desiring?
Yeah, the inventory, we've always talked about the inventory of housing, and there's some changes going on there. There's some new developments. You see one in Toronto going on right now. But the inventory for that type of housing has always been pretty low. And it's not something that, from a government standpoint, you don't have a lot of catalyst to get that moving. It really becomes an independent effort. So, we're really we see one, we'll see a couple more, but I do think we'll see more housing developments start to pop up to meet the demand. In the meantime, in today's day and age, to travel an hour for a job is people do it. So we'll have a lot of commuters coming into our area, and we know that we're already having that coming in to fill those jobs that aren't being taken by local people.
Countywide and in the city of Steubenville, which is, of course, the county seat, we've been talking about attracting young families. Is that then the goal? Young families, professionals who can come in here and want to stay?
I really think it is. And, even if you track the numbers at some of the schools, that's already happening. I know that Harding has added on classrooms. I know that Big Red, has a lot more students than they had, say, maybe 5 years ago. I think that's already happening to some extent.
Yeah, and if you look at, again, how we've grown, we used to talk about our schools. We need to revamp them and the quality of life and bringing people into the area. And the voters and the school districts have both, in general, looked fondly upon that effort. And you've got new schools being built, new facilities being built, not everywhere, but that doesn't mean everybody's got all the money they need. And we know that there's still some distressed school districts out there. But, to see Indian Creek's project, Toronto's project, I know Edison's done some really good revamping of their buildings and programs. So when you see that starting to happen, there was a time in our county when you didn't think any of that would go on. And that's, again, puts us in this place where the opportunities are right in our favor to capitalize.
Yeah, I firmly agree. I firmly believe we've already turned a corner, too. I can't think of the last time I watch, as we all do in elections, I can't think of the last time we passed as many levies as we saw passed in recent elections, because people are starting to get it. If you're going to attract young families to the area, you have to have good schools. It's not just the jobs. People look at that. I know when families are looking at relocating, they always look at school districts, and they look at the ratings of the schools and how safe the area is. So all those factors come together. And I think we're turning that corner, but we have to present ourselves as well as we can.
We're going to head to another commercial break right now, but we will be back with the commissioners after this.
The Marshall County Co-op Propane Division, part of the Southern States Cooperative, the 9th largest propane distributor in the country. We have buying power and staying power. Sometimes bigger is better. 845-2375.
Time for another vehicle? It's time for Auto Choice. Huge selection, fantastic prices, award-winning service. 2 great locations, Route 2 Moundsville, Route 7 Bel Air, or visit us at AutoChoiceSelection.com.
Long live the king.
The Pittsburgh Renaissance Festival, just southeast of Pittsburgh. Opening weekend, August 17th and 18th. Filled with royalty, pageantry, jugglers and musicians, comedy, games, fine arts and crafts.
It's entertainment. It's fantasy.
It's an adventure. To the past.
Eat, drink, and be merry at the Pittsburgh Renaissance Festival. Discount coupons available at PittsburghRenFest.com.
Affordable fun for everyone.
Get your morning ready with News 9 Sunrise.
All the major local news overnight.
And if there's breaking news in your neighborhood, I'll take you there with live local reports.
Be ready before you walk out the door.
On News 9 Sunrise.
The Marshall County Co-op Propane Division, part of the Southern States Cooperative, the 9th largest propane distributor in the country. We have buying power and staying power. Sometimes bigger is better. 845-2375.
This is One-on-One with Rich Pierce, a deeper dive into the issues that affect you. Sponsored by Trinity Health System.
Welcome back. It's time to pitch Jefferson County. So let's say you're a business and you're looking to relocate, and you've got a choice between Jefferson County. You can go to West Virginia, you can go to Pennsylvania, across the river. So pitch Jefferson County. Why here, Mr. Gentile?
Oh, I think firmly, and I talk to friends around the country all the time. I think in this area it's quality of life versus quantity of life. We may not have the opportunities to go to a Thai restaurant or a different ethnic restaurant every night, or in the shopping opportunities and some of the things you have in the big cities. But when it comes to quality of life, I don't think there's a better place than Jefferson County. You know, you get around fairly easily. The traffic's not generally that bad. All the things that we do through our normal life, there's a quality to what you do. You know the people in your community. You know the people that your kids are friends with. You know the families. You know the parents. And those are really important things in day-to-day life. So, I think the quality of life that we have in this area is absolutely phenomenal. We have recreation opportunities. If you like the outdoors, it's all around you. If you like the sports, we're Pittsburgh's right there, and I think the quality of life we have here is one of the best things. So that's one of the things that I would pitch to employers, is this is an absolutely wonderful place to live and raise a family.
Yeah, I have the opportunity through a couple different avenues to have visitors in from outside the county many times. And one thing they always say, it's a beautiful county, and we lose track of that sometimes because we're here every day. But if you're from outside of this area and you come into this area, you realize how beautiful it is. That's why when someone throws something on the ground trash-wise, I get really upset, because we need to have a little bit more pride in our area. But aside from what Commissioner Gentile said, look at the numbers. Look at proximity to Pittsburgh, proximity to the airport, tax rates in our county. So, the quality of life, and then you add, real estate. How quickly can you get the house for the right price in the right school district with the right teachers? To me, it's always been an easy sell, and I always get confused. I've had some people relocate to work for me, and they'll pick Pittsburgh, and I have no idea, because right here you have everything you need on a number basis. We know we have our challenges, and we can improve and improve and improve, but I have a lot of pride in our county.
Absolutely.
Not too long ago, the Appalachian Regional Commission ranked Jefferson County an at-risk county economically. What are your thoughts on that study? Do you agree with it, or do you just kind of throw it out?
I think it's nonsense. I think there's a lot of factors that they looked at. First of all, they weren't seeing the full picture of what happens today. And I think there's a lot of factors, there's a lot of criteria that they weigh that I may not agree with. Just like I said about the quality of life, how many quality of life factors did they have in there? In how you live your everyday life. So I think some of that's nonsense.
Yeah, I have to agree. I saw that come out and I just kind of smiled. And people put different numbers into their studies, and they look at different pieces of the county, but and it gets taken out of context. You can take all kinds of studies and show things bend one way or the other. We've seen that every day in national politics. So. And I don't think there was any bad intention to that, but I think it was not taking the full context of what we know to be Jefferson County. So,
what do you want people to know? Who may see that, and when they're trying to choose a place to maybe move their family, and they see that, what do you tell them?
This is no better place to live, all around. I have friends that live in other parts of the country, and they have no one in their lives. They don't have a big network of friends. I challenge you in Jefferson County to manage all of your friends and all the people that want to be involved in your life. And when you have a hardship, you really see who's there. And in Jefferson County, we shine in that regard. I really do think we do.
All right, we're going to head to commercial break. It's our final commercial break. When we come back, each commissioner will get to choose a topic, talk about it for 1 minute. This is One-on-One with Rich Pierce.
Score big this season when you finance your vehicle with First Choice America Community Federal Credit Union. Rates as low as 2.79% APR and $100 cash in your pocket. Get on the winning team with First Choice America Community Federal Credit Union.
Termites. Feasting on homes 24/7. We're on the move. Roger.
Hey, Rick, all good? Oh, yeah, we're good.
We're good.
Termites never stop trying to get in. At Terminix, we never stop working to keep them out because they can cause thousands of dollars in damage. Call Terminix now to schedule a free termite inspection. As America's leading termite control provider, we'll do whatever it takes to stop them in their tracks. 100% satisfaction guaranteed. To schedule a free termite inspection, call 1-800-TERMINIX and protect your home. And if they ever do come back, so will we. To schedule a free termite inspection, call 1-800-TERMINIX or visit Terminix.com. Terminix, defenders of home.
It only takes an instant. A life ends. A family's world is turned upside down. Each year, people in Ohio die needlessly, not due to negligence or distracted driving, but because of dangerous railroad crossings like these. You can help before another innocent life is cut short. Report bad railroad crossings at angelsontrack.org. That's angelsontrack.org. Because bad crossings kill good drivers.
Don't sit on the sidelines this season. Get in the game and refinance your vehicle with First Choice America Community Federal Credit Union. Rates as low as 2.79% APR and $100 cash in your pocket. Get on the winning team with First Choice America Community Federal Credit Union.
This is One-on-One with Rich Pierce, a deeper dive into the issues that affect you. Sponsored by Trinity Health System.
We are back. We have 2 minutes to go. Commissioner Maple, let's head to you first.
2 minutes, I can say whatever I want. That's
You've
great.
got one. You've got to split the time.
Oh, I got one.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing that I'd like to take the chance to talk about is the stability of our government, and we have a really solid group of elected officials that cooperate, understand the major goals that we're up against, and it's not just the elected officials, but all the people that work in the courthouse or in their departments. Doesn't mean we're perfect. We all have challenges, but it's always nice to be able to have stability there, so when you do have growth, you do have opportunities. People aren't looking at news reports saying that they're always arguing, they're always fighting, and people aren't getting along, so it's really, really good to encourage businesses, encourage people to be proud of their government. And I hope that we continue to do that. So I'm really happy to work with the folks that are elected in our county.
And you hit it square on the head. It's not accidental. We work very hard. The three of us work hard. Other elected officials and other public officials, we work hard. You don't always get your own way. You don't always get things the way you want. But if your agenda is what's best for the community and you're willing to listen and compromise and work with others, and I think we've shown in the last 10 years that the three of us have been working together, and along with working with the sheriff and the auditor and the prosecutor and the judges, there's a real desire for everyone to work together for the betterment of the community. And I think that's one of the best things going for us in this area.
All right, well, that does it for this edition of One-on-One with Rich Pierce. A big thank you to the commissioners for joining me today. Thank you so much, gentlemen. If you have anyone you'd like to see on the show, let me know. Send me a tweet at RichWTOV9 or email